examples of things that could happen at level 2. This is not the be-all and end-all list. Flexible grouping or cluster options, but they should relate to the talent and abilities of students. So for example, if you've got gifted math kids, you should be working on math. What a surprise. If you've got gifted kids in reading language arts, you should be working on activities that relate to reading and language arts. For example, junior grade books, one of my favorites. If you've got kids who are interested in science or social studies, perhaps they can do a project that's related to their area of interest. These groups are flexible, ongoing, we talked about that. And teachers need to be encouraged to accommodate for multiple students in one setting. So this is not one-on-one kind of stuff. Occasionally it might be, but it will be more often than not groups of kids. Okay, beyond that, now we're talking about the tippy top of this triangle, okay? These are severely gifted kids, all right? These are the kind of things that gifted coordinators are the people, become the people who have to make this happen, all right? So maybe it's early entrance to kindergarten. I've got a little 4K kid right now that we're thinking of just moving her right to 5K, probably by next week. Right, she's just ready to go. There's no reason in holding her back another year. Sometimes these kids are partially accelerated, maybe just for math. Maybe they go down the hall for math a year or two ahead. Or maybe they're radically accelerated, whole grade accelerated. Early entrance, anytime the child needs it. Maybe they need to go directly to the middle school. Maybe while they're in middle school, they need to take a class at the high school. And again, well-kept secret, the school districts are supposed to pay for that transportation. They don't want you to know that because obviously it's expensive. But really, in order to make that happen, if you don't have a campus where that works easily, our middle school and high school are attached, that works very easily for us. And in some points we had kids walk over to a middle school. Again, sometimes you got to do a little fighting as a parent of gifted kids, and you've got to say, hey, you know, what about that transportation issue? Sometimes stuff works out too. I once had a parent who wanted an option for her child to go to middle school early, and he needed a ride, and as it turned out, one of our high school teachers was on a flexible schedule, lived in the neighborhood, picked him up, dropped him off at the middle school, and the school nurse took him back to his elementary school because he was on her route. So, you know, creative, flexible options for this kind of thing. And gifted and talented coordinators should be the people that help you solve this problem. Yes, Beth?
Is that true if your district doesn't have lessons?
Is that true? Yeah, it's especially true if your district doesn't have lessons. There has to be a way for them, if that option is the only option for your child. Okay, so I know one year, for example, this is a long time ago, we needed an algebra class, a geometry class at the middle school. And they didn't want to pay for transportation. But lo and behold, they paid for one of the high school teachers to come over to the middle school. Now, as I was thinking about the cost of, you know, a teacher's time to travel and teach a whole block at the middle school, it seemed to me that a taxi might be cheaper, or Go Kid Go, or, you know, now we have all of those different options. So. And we can talk later about that. And then early entrance to post-secondary options dual enrollment. Another thing you may not hear, and for some of you this is a long way off yet, you might not hear about is post-secondary youth options. If your child has exhausted the entire curriculum that is offered in a certain subject area, let's say they've taken every single math class including Calc AB and Calc BC, and you don't offer anything else, and your child still wants to take another class, your school district is required to pay for that. Now, the guidance counselors usually mumble over that part, you know, when they're presenting to freshman parents, because it's costly. And in fact, now it's not even done quite as much because we can Skype in classes, we can do telepresence learning. There are a lot more options for kids online than there ever were before. But know that that's an option for older kids. Okay, so what are some ways you can collaborate about your child with your child's teachers? Introduce yourself early in the year if you haven't done that. I suggest it. Always start out on a positive note with teachers. You know, share something that your child likes about school, even if it's recess or gym. A lot of kids, that is their thing. Right, kids? Right? hard for all kids. All right, don't come in with just blinders about your kid, although, you know, I know how important your child is to you, my kids were to me. But realize that teachers are dealing with 30 kids' needs or 125 kids' needs. Offer to help in some way that you can. It doesn't have to be anything huge. You know, teachers welcome people cutting things out, tallying up book orders, all kinds of things like that. Before you get ready to go on a conference, I suggest to arrange for it in advance. Try not to blindside teachers. You know, drop in and stay for an hour, like the conference I had last night. Try to have a goal in mind before you begin. Begin with the end in mind. What would you like as a result of a conference? What would you like to happen? Prepare for the conference. Bring some examples along. Some of our best conferences happen when parents give rehearsed examples from home, or school, or the community, or church, or Cub Scouts, or martial arts, or whatever the child is involved in, so that we can get concrete ideas as teachers about what that child enjoys outside of school. Rehearse if you need to. Practice it on your friend or your spouse or in a mirror, or as I tell kids, your teddy bear. But think about what you want to say. And in fact, if you're afraid that you're going to forget, write it down. Take yourself a little note card, just like some of us do when we go to the doctor, so we don't forget when we're under stress what we want to ask. Remember that most teachers are eager to work with you. I wish I could say all, but I'm going to say most. Most teachers are eager to work with you. When you're at the conference, say what your kid likes about school. Get to the point, try and be concise. You know, usually conferences are half-hour slots. Sometimes at the middle school and high school, they're like 5-minute slots, which barely gives you enough time to say, I'm Susie's mom, hi. Consider questions like these. I love these questions, and I didn't write them all. What are your academic goals for my child for this year? What do you see as my child's strengths and weaknesses? I used to joke when my kids were in high school, we'd go in and identify ourselves, and the teachers would get out the old grade book and the ruler, and they'd stick it under the line, and they'd go, yep, she's a 92. And I'd say, what does that mean? Much rather would hear, what's she good at? You know, is she a good classroom discusser? Can she hold her own? Is she kind? Is she well read? Can she connect ideas? Can she ask good questions? And what's she not so good at? Because I'd like to work with you on that. How do you see my child learning? And how can I help? Finally, how can we work together? Ask for clarification right then and there. Remember that if you compromise, everybody wins, especially the child. And finally, afterwards, if you say you're going to do something, do what you say you're going to do. Call or write. Simple thank you is great. Try not to nag. If your spouse or guardian or anyone else that needs to know about the conference wasn't there, be sure to share that information with them. And always respect the chain of command. So let's say you've got some issues about what's going on in your child's classroom. Don't go to the superintendent first. Try and solve it at the lowest level where your child is in the classroom, and at the level that's closest to your child. Eventually, if you need to, you can work your way up. But usually, if problems are solved when they're small, they are easily resolvable. If they get escalated, they're much more difficult to solve. Okay. Remember I said that all of these handouts are going to be somewhere? Several categories. And one of the categories is after tonight, and I won't look at it, I promise. I will say, you can take me, but I want to look at it. There are also some other